Hey guys! Today we will have a look at how the BeatStep Pro from Arturia can work together with VCV Rack. We will start by syncing them to one another, then we will have a look at the control mode of the BeatStep to see how we can send MIDI-CC to VCV Rack. Then we will have a look at the two melodic sequencers of the BeatStep Pro and the drum sequencer. It's gonna be fun, let's do this. Okay, so here it is, the BeatStep Pro Black Edition. Here we have VCV Rack, and let's really start by looking at how we can sync both of them together. Now, we have two options for this. We can all make the BeatStep Pro the master, like I have it set up here, or we can make a VCV Rack the master. So VCV Rack will decide or will control the tempo. Now in my audio interface, I have only two outputs. I have left and right, so I cannot make VCV Rack the master, because what we are doing in the back of the BeatStep Pro, I will put a picture or a video now, a short video on the screen. We have a clock input and a clock output. If you want to make VCV Rack the master, we will take the output of our clock. In this case, I'm using clocked, which is really recommended if you are using with external gear. Clocked is built to work with external gear, external hardware. So I'm using clocked here. You can see it here in VCV Rack. And what you will do, you will take the output of clocked and you will connect it to a dedicated output on your audio interface. I have just two left and right. So if I connect it now to one of those outputs, we will hear the clock. Which can be not so nice. So I will not do this, but what you have to do is also make sure that you have the BeatStep Pro set up in the MIDI control center with the right clock resolution. So what you do, you send the clock, you take really the output of the clock, which is actually, if we look at the scope, you can see that a clock is just a sort of a pulse wave or a square wave, like we all know. So we just send this audio signal to one of our dedicated outputs for this, to the clock input of the BeatStep Pro, and now VCV Rack is the master. Like I said, I cannot show you this now, but I can show you the other way to make the BeatStep Pro as the master. So again, we have a clock input in the back of the BeatStep Pro. We have also a clock output. And again, you have to make sure which clock resolution you are using. This you can check in the MIDI control center. I'm using 24 ppqn, so this is my clock resolution. So what I'm doing, I have 4 inputs on my audio interface. One is dedicated for the clock. I'm sending the clock from the clock output of the BeatStep Pro. Really the audio going to my audio interface. For my audio interface, I know this is the correct output. This is going to the BPM input of clocked. And now all I have to do is change the clock resolution. Like I said, I have it set up on 24 ppqn. So in the mode button here, I can switch the mode to P4, P8, P12, and P24, which is clock resolution of 24. And now it's actually sending audio, so a clock signal from the BeatStep Pro to VCV Rack. And now when I click play, you can see that clock is being synchronized to the BeatStep Pro. You see it's happening really quickly and it's really stable. We are not using MIDI at this point. We are using actual clock signal from the BeatStep Pro to VCV Rack. Now you can see that when I change the BPM of the BeatStep Pro, now it's on 131. You can see it also here on clocked. And you can see how they are synced. When I raise the BPM, for example, to 146, also clocked is now on 146. I can take it also down. And you can see it changing almost together. It's really synced. It's really stable. So now the BeatStep Pro is sending a clock to VCV Rack and they are both synced. It's much better than using MIDI. Shall we try it shortly with MIDI? I will stop the clock, the BeatStep, and when I stop it, you can also see the clock is also being stopped. The run is turned off. When I click play, the run is on. When I click stop, the run is off, which means now the BeatStep Pro is controlling the clock of VCV Rack. Let's try this with MIDI. I want to show you that with MIDI it's not so stable. So let's add the MIDI module in VCV Rack. I will choose the BeatStep Pro. Now we have two clock outputs, and on the right click menu you can choose the clock rate of both of them. So I will choose 16th notes, because again this is my clock resolution, and this I will send to the BPM input of clocked, and let's change this to P4, and now I click play, and you can see that clocked is not so stable. It's going 93, 92, 94 even. So I will delete the MIDI module, and I will send again the actual audio signal, the clock signal, for my audio interface to the BPM input of clocked. Let's stop it for a second and change it again to P24 or 24 PPQN. Click play, and now we have it synced perfectly, and it's super stable. So this is how you sync the BeatStep Pro with VCV Rack. Let's move on to start using the BeatStep Pro as to send MIDI-CC. So we have control mode on the BeatStep Pro, which means that we have the 16 knobs that we can use. We have here the pattern buttons that we can use as gates to trigger different events. And we have here a sort of a keyboard to send. We can send also triggers with it, but we can send also pitch information. We have velocity, we have aftertouch. So let's really try to add a voice and see what we can do with it. Let's add a bass first. I will go to 21 kilohertz, and I will add the palm loop oscillator, which is a really nice oscillator, really good for basses also, because we have two rows here of outputs. The first row will be 1 octave higher than the second one, so we can use we can add also sub oscillators. So let's see. Let's add also a filter. I will use tangents from Volt, which is here, and I will send a sawtooth wave from the first row to the low pass input of tangents. This will go to the mixer. We already have sound, and I will take a sine wave from the second row, and this will go also to the mixer, but I have here also a reverb. I want the sine wave to be after the reverb, so I have here another mono channel set up. Oh yes. And now let's add again the MIDI module. Let's mute this for a second, and now I have it set up. First of all, we can choose already the BeatStep. Let's mute everything already, like this. Okay. So now we have the BeatStep here selected. Now I have it set up like this, that control mode is MIDI channel number 10. I have sequencer 1, MIDI channel number 1, sequencer 2, MIDI channel number 2, and the drum sequencers MIDI channel number 3. And the control mode, as I said, it's MIDI channel number 10. You can set it up in the MIDI control center as you see fit, as you see how it's comfortable for you. So now we have channel 10 set up in the MIDI channel, and I will take the CV output. This will go to the volt per octave input of the palm loop. And let's unmute this and see how it sounds like. Oh yeah. Very nice. So now we are controlling the pitch of the palm loop oscillator with the BeatStep Pro, with the pads. And I have to say, it's a different experience than with playing with the keyboard. There are some things that I would do that I will not do with the keyboard, more percussive stuff, let's say. I will never play like this with the keyboard, I think. I don't know, it's a different feel. You can get really nice ideas out of it. So now we have the bass always playing. You can see the BeatStep Pro is stopped, and the clocked is also stopped, but still the bass is playing. There is a workaround. What we can do, we can add the flow module from AS, and you can see we have two sections. And we can send the sawtooth wave that we have after the filter, we can send it first to the first input of flow, and the sine wave to the second input of flow, and then from there to the mixer. And then from there to the mixer, very nice. And now we can assign the stop and start buttons to flow. And what flow will do, it will stop the signal from flowing to the mixer, or it will let it through. I can click the buttons, of course, but I don't want to do it manually. I want that the stop and start buttons of the Arturia BeatStep will stop and start the sound. So what I have to do, I have to add a sort of a mixer. I will add umix from Bog Audio, and I will send the start output and the stop output. Let's see also the cables just for a second. The start and stop outputs from the MIDI module to umix, and from there it will go to the external inputs of flow, just like this. And now when I click play, the signal will go through to the mixers, and when I click stop, it will stop. Very nice. So now we have full control on the sound. When we start the sequences, also the bass will start. When we stop it, also the bass will sort of stop. It's not really stopping, but the sound is not going through to the mixers. Okay, so let's see what else we can do with this bass. Like we can see, we have it going through tangents, which is a filter. Let's take the resonance a bit up, lower the cutoff point. And now let's assign the first knob to control the cutoff point of the filter. So let's see, I will use the MIDI-CC module, so we can send CC information or CC MIDI information. I will choose again the BeatStep Pro, and again I will choose channel number 10, because again, control mode, I have it set up as channel number 10. This is really important that you separate between the different channels, otherwise everything will control everything. And now I click the first slot and I move the first knob. So now the first slot is assigned to this knob, to knob number 1. And this I will take to the CV input of the cutoff point and open the attenuator. Oh yeah. Now what I like about the BeatStep Pro, about the knobs, if you move them slowly, they also open slowly, but if you move them quickly, they open really quickly. So you can do with one turn, you can totally close them or open them, or you can move really slowly. And this I think also you can set up in the MIDI control center, which is really nice. Now we can play. Oh yeah. And again, stop, and we have no sound. Okay, what we also have here are the button buttons. Maybe we'll use them later, but I want to show you what they are doing. Let's add again the scope. Very nice. And now for them, we will also use the MIDI-CC for gates. So let's assign one slot to be pattern number 1. And again, this is all in control mode. In the sequencer modes, it will do different things. And let's take this output to the scope. And now those buttons, the pattern buttons, are gates. Now what do I mean by gates? It means that when I click them, let's take the time here down. You can see we have positive 10 volts. You can see this on the scope. And they stay open. We still have 10 volts going through as long as I click, or as I press, or as I hold this button. And when I let go, it goes back to 0, which means that we have sorts of gates. But we don't have to use them as gates. We can also use them as triggers to trigger different events, to trigger different parts in the song or in the composition or in the track. So let's get rid of scope. And let's see what else do we have now. So now we are done with control mode. Of course, there are many more features, but let's move on to the sequencer. Let's take the first sequencer and start using it, utilizing it. So let's see, let's add a voice. I will use the FM operator from Bog Audio. Now this is a really easy module to use with stuff like this because we have a built-in envelope generator. And we have feedback also, so we can control all sorts of stuff. Now the sequencer, they can control pitch information, or they send volt per octave, let's say. You can use it for whatever you want. They also send gates, but they also send velocity. And velocity doesn't mean that it has to go to the volume or the level of the voice. We can use it for all sorts of stuff. So let's see, let's connect them. I will add another MIDI module, the MIDI I, and I will set this to the BeatStep. And now the first sequencer is channel number 1, MIDI channel number 1. This is how I have it set up. This is comfortable for me, but of course you can change it in the MIDI control center. And I will take the CV output to the volt per octave input of the FM operator, the gate to the gate input, and the velocity to the feedback amount CV input of the FM operator. And I will open the feedback amount just a bit. Very nice. And now we can play. Let's connect it also to the mixer, of course. And now we can play and activate the envelope for the gate. Now we can play the oscillator. And here we have a sort of a keyboard. You see it starts from C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, and so on. Okay, so now when I play, you can hear that the velocity, if I play softly, we will have less feedback amount. But if I play more roughly, you can hear that the feedback amount is opening. Very nice. And when we will build a sequence, we can take the velocity also down and create all sorts of variations. So let's really start building a sequence. So let's click the play button. So we have our bass always, always we can go back to control mode and control this bass while playing, while the sequencer is going. So let's start. Let's add a sequence. We have a few options for adding sequences. We can either click the note we want. Let's say I want step number 1 will be this note, so I click the note and I click step number 1. Step number 1 is the note C. Let's take the timing a bit more, the tempo a bit more up. And you can see everything is still in sync. And let's add a few more steps. And now we can control the velocity also. So let's say step number 8 will have also a bit more velocity, so which means more feedback amount for the FM operator. Maybe step 13 a bit more. And now we can also change the pitch. So now we are on pitch, and let's change step number 5. First of all, if I shift, hold shift, I can choose a few different scales. So let's choose a minor scale. And now all the notes I enter are in a minor scale. So let's go to 5. And let's change also 11. Oh yeah. Okay, so now we have a sequence. We can also or what else can we do? We can also change the gate length. And now what's really nice about this sequencer, or about the BeatStep Pro, that we have also randomness, that we can introduce randomness to the sequence. So let's really do this. Now the randomness will take all what we set up with the knobs. So if, let's say, now we have 3 notes set up, the randomness will just randomize those 3 notes. So let's add on the steps that we don't have on, let's randomize the pitch a bit, just like this. Like I said, it's quantized to a minor scale. So now we are not changing the notes, but we just let the BeatStep Pro choose from a pool of more notes. And let's add randomness just on this track. So I will click current track and I will add probability first. So let's say 30%, and also randomness amount. Oh yes. And we have something more alive, and we can play with the bass a bit. Now here, this I didn't say before, but here the notes are different than in the sequencer. The sequencer we have really like a keyboard, but in control mode they are just one after the other. So we will C, C sharp, D, D sharp, and so on. So we have a bit more than an octave. So if this is C, this is also C, so C sharp, D and D sharp. So it's a bit different than playing with a sequencer. But now we have the first sequencer ready. And again, if I stop it, we stop everything because we set up the flow module for the bass, and the sequence stops, and clocked also stopped. So now let's add another sequence. I will use sequencer number 2. And let's see, let's add another voice. And what shall we use now? Let's add something different than the FM operator. Let's use the EV3 from Squinky Labs. Now this is 3 even VCOs from Befaco in one module, and it's really CPU efficient. So let's do something like this. Let's use the even waveforms, and let's set this to be a few octaves lower. And the first oscillator a few octaves lower, the second one 1 octave lower, let's say, but we will set it on G. So this is a 5th up from C. And the last oscillator we will leave as it is. Let's add another MIDI module. Let's see, we'll add MIDI 1, and now we will set again the BeatStep Pro, but this time it will be MIDI channel number 2, because this is my second sequencer. So let's send CV to the CV input of the EV3. Now if I send this first voltage to the first CV input, to the first volt per octave input, it will be normalized to all 3 oscillators. So we have just have to connect the first volt per octave input. Very nice. And let's see, let's add also slap from Volt. Now slap is an envelope generator with the built-in VCA. So all I have to do is send the mixed output. I will use the mixed output to the input of the VCA. From there to the mixer, we will take the gate output of the MIDI module, and we will send this to the gate input of slap. And now let's see, let's start the sequence. So we have the bass, we have the first sequence. And let's turn on the oscillators. Okay, so now we have another voice. Let's span the FM operator a bit to the left and this voice a bit to the right. And let's see, let's start building a sequence. You know what, let's make this sequence actually a bit shorter. Let's make this, if I press and hold last step, I can choose the last step of the sequence. Actually we can choose up to 64 steps, but for this demonstration I will use now, let's use a 7-step sequence, so we have some polyrhythmic magic going on. And let's see, 1, 4 and 7. Okay, and let's set this also to be on a minor key. And let's send this voice through a filter. So before slap I will add another tangents. Send the voice through tangents. Take the resonance a bit up. And now we will use the velocity properties or the velocity section of the second sequencer to control the cutoff point. So we take the velocity output and connect it to the cutoff point CV input. And now we can introduce also randomness in this sequence. So again, current track, just to this sequencer there will be a probability of 50%. And it will be randomized quite heavily. Now of course we can also mute the different sequencers and we can play with the bass again. Now we can also set different play modes for each sequence. So if I click and hold shift, we can see it can go forward or reverse or alternate. Let's leave it in alternate mode. And let's take the second sequence 1 octave lower. And change one of the waves. Let's take the lowest waveform and change it from even to square wave. Oh yes, and take the velocity output and use it to control the pulse width of the first oscillator. So we connect the velocity also to the pulse width modulation CV input and open the attenuator a bit. So now we have even more modulation. Okay, now let's make some space. Let's stop this. Very nice. And make some space for some drums. We will use the drum sequencer. So let's see. Let's take a few voices down. I will take those voices here to the third row. And let's start adding some drums. And for the drums, I will use the MIDI trigger module because we will use this sequencer to trigger different modules. Again, the BeatStep Pro, but this time I will choose channel number 3. Again, drum sequencer, I have it set up as MIDI channel number 3. And now it's actually already sort of assigned, because C2 is this here, and it starts from C2. You can see it also on the MIDI module, and goes C sharp, D. So it goes really in the order of the pads here. So let's start with the bass drum. I will use the bass drum module from Hora. And let's send the first output to trigger it, and it will go also after the reverb. Very nice. So let's play the sequence. And you can hear this is the bass drum. Let's add also already a snare drum. Again from Hora, and trigger it with this pad here, and this will go to the mixer. Now another cool thing about the BeatStep Pro, it has also a metronome, so we can see where we are in the sequence. And I have it set up that the metronome is also going from the same MIDI channel as the drum sequencer, and it will trigger this pad here. So if I shift and click, hold shift and click the metro button, we can hear the snare, and the snare is now playing the metronome. So now I know where my 1 is, and I can record the different drum patterns. And I can turn off the metronome. And let's add now snare. Very nice. Let's add now hi-hats, or hats again from Hora. Now we have two different triggers here. We have the trigger for the closed hat and the open hat. So let's send triggers to both of them and take the hi-hat to the mixer. Now this is the closed one, this is the open one. Let's turn the volume a bit up. And let's record the pattern. And what's also cool about this drum sequencer is you can set each voice in a different sequence length, so we can have really nice polyrhythmic stuff going on. Okay, so if you are on drum sequencer and you hold and press shift, press and hold shift, and you click shift and number 16, you see there's a blue line here, a blue light, and now we can have different length for different voices. So let's again choose this pad here, and this pad will have 9 steps. Very nice. And let's see, let's choose a different voice, and let's use a cymbal, let's say, so this G. Let's see if it's this one. Yeah, okay. So this will trigger the cymbal. And let's take it to the mixer. Can you hear it? And let's see. Yes. And now I can mute different drums. control everything with the BeatStep Pro. Controlling the sequencers. Now we can also introduce randomness to the drum sequence. So again, current track, and let's make this even heavier, randomized. So if I mute both sequences, you can hear the variation. I can also set up the knobs in control mode to control the level of different channels. So I have it here, the MIDI-CC. Let's assign 2 knobs, or 3 actually, to control the level of the different sequencers, or the sequences, and the bass. So let's see. This here, 3, and we have another bass here, so let's do this also, the gain to here. Very nice. So now this is the bass, sequencers, so I can take the sequencers, fade them in, take them out. I have the drums. Okay, very nice. So this is a really fun thing to have, the BeatStep Pro. It also works perfectly with VCV Rack. They are synced together. We can send MIDI-CC to VCV Rack. We have 2 melodic sequencers and a drum sequencers. It has tons of features that I didn't show you in this video. Maybe I will come back to this in different videos. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe and hit the bell. And have a good one.